weeks ago and came to the reading, the Micah reading, I'd forgotten what it actually said. And so I started reading about going up to the mountain of the Lord, and Clive's getting ever so more cross-eyed, going, what's all that about then? And then it got to the part where it talks about turning swords into plowshares and nations not training for war anymore. And I remembered why I picked the reading. Micah was a prophet, of course, like many of the Old Testament prophets, who spoke God's word into turbulent times, spoke God's word into constant war. And if you read through the Old Testament, there's war all the time, pretty well. And it seems a very bloody time. So the hope that this would end, the hope that people could have a rest from war, as we heard at the end of that reading, sit under their own vines. What a hope that would be. And that's a hope God speaks into every war. And there are wars taking place now that we're well aware of. We're all aware of the war in Ukraine at the moment. And this one isn't going to be over anytime soon. Imagine Micah's voice, the voice of the Lord coming into the rubble we have seen on our TV screens and proclaiming a peace, a God-ordained peace into this ravaged land. There's also Yemen. We don't hear much about that on the news at the moment, but there is a dreadful conflict taking place in Yemen at this time. More people displaced, more homes shattered, more lives destroyed. And God speaks peace into this situation. No, the swords will become agricultural implements. No more will any nation train for war anymore. And then we can remember conflicts that are ongoing around the globe. Palestine, Israel comes to mind, completely intractable. And any of these situations, if we hold them in prayer, if we pray for a just peace, we know this is something that human endeavor alone can never bring. It will require the intervention of God in order for any of these situations in conflict to be peacefully and justly resolved. And Micah speaks into these 2,500 years later, saying it is the will of the Lord that all the instruments of death that you see before you will be repurposed, recycled, upcycled into agricultural instruments, instruments of war becoming tools that give us food, and the time training to kill others will be past. Go to bring you memory. I was blessed, fortunate. In my time in the Navy, I didn't go into a place of conflict. I was on the list to go to Afghanistan just the year before they pulled out of Afghanistan. So I never went to a place of conflict myself. But conflict stretches so wide. Conflict stretches so wide, you don't have to have been there to have been influenced by it. Let's try something. Change the mood just for a moment. Knock, knock. That's just to see if you're still listening. Doctor. Yes. You're looking very puzzled. Well, you usually do when I'm speaking. Okay. Knock, knock. Ah, you're getting it now. Little guy can't reach the doorbell. No, that's the punchline, and you knew that. Okay. Right, okay. Penalty joke, because you're so dreadful. What did the grape say when it was run over by a steamroller? You do know this also, keep quiet. Nothing, just let out a little wine. Okay, there's a reason for that, and there's a reason for that today. The point is, you know these jokes from so many years ago. You probably told them in the playground, didn't you? One or two nods there. You know what's coming next. Okay, here's something else. And it's not a joke, but you might know what's coming next. Someone dressed like this and a senior naval officer walk down the street together. What happens next? Someone dressed as a vicar and a senior naval officer walk down the street together. What happens next? 10 years ago, a lot of people, not in the military, would have got this. 10 years ago, pretty well everyone got it. Any guesses? When you see a military chaplain and a senior officer in the street together, it means one thing and one thing only. They're going to knock on the door. They're going to knock on the door and bring the news of the death of someone to their next of kin. This is a process called kin forming. Next of kin, informing. And in my time in the Navy, I had to do it twice. Once on a Sunday morning, just as I was preparing to lead worship, so hey, that was fun. Let me tell you about my first time. I was actually at home in the Midlands when I got the phone call from my team leader who was up in Faz Lane. And he had got a name and address. And he passed this name and address on to me, and he was passing it to me because I was the closest chaplain at the time, and I was to meet a Royal Marines officer in a small town in the Midlands. And I got there, met this Royal Marines officer, but we couldn't go and knock on the door. We couldn't make the knock. We couldn't call at the house. And the reason for that was that the guy who had died had a brother. And his brother was still on an aircraft, actually flying into Afghanistan. And we had to wait for the aircraft to land and for the brother to be pulled aside so that we could give the news to the next of kin who should have been the people to know first. Now, it was chaos. For secure communications, it turns out that most journalists knew who people had died before the families. And we had come to an agreement with the press to give us 2 hours to get to someone's home, to give them the bad news, before some journalist turned up on the doorstep saying, "How do you feel now your son's dead?" Which is what had been going on. So we had a short amount of time. And we're standing at the end of the street. And I think it was spring half term or something like that. So we're standing at the end of the street, an officer in number 1 uniform, me dressed a lot like this, and everyone, apart from the family we're supposed to go and see, knows what's going on. We're stood at the end of the street, and everyone coming back from work. Everyone coming back from the shops, or school, or wherever they've been. They're mowing their lawns, they're walking their dogs, whatever they're doing. It's early evening, it's light, we can be seen. Everyone on this estate knows what's about to happen, apart from the family we're supposed to be seeing. We ring headquarters, can we? No, not yet. 25 minutes we're stood there. The whole of the rest of that estate went past us. Everyone else on that estate knew exactly what we were going to do, and pretty well, I would bet, knew exactly which family we were going to. We get this phone call. You can make the knock. So we walked down the street, and I want you to imagine a 1960s and 70s estate with dormer bungalows, semi-detached houses, neat front gardens. You've probably seen them around, maybe lived in one. And as we approached the house that we were supposed to go to, could see that it had a porch. Now, you might have one of these yourselves, where you've got the original door, the frosted glass, and the outer door and the outer porch is all clear glass. And I think some of you have got that anyway. You know the sort of thing I mean. As we approach the door, the officer says to me, "Can you do this? I can't." Now, I'm not actually supposed to do it. I'm supposed to be there to support him, to support the family. Supposed to keep my gob shut, really. But this was his first time too. And I said, "That's fine, I'll knock the door." Now, those of you who know anything about my background know that I've been in politics. I have walked the streets, I've knocked more doors than you've had hot dinners. I can knock a door, I can ring a doorbell. No, I'm professionally trained doorbell ringer. So I said, "I'll do that." So we went up to the door, rang the doorbell. And there's a moment, now, if you're as experienced in knocking on doors as I am, you know within half a nanosecond if there's someone in the house. You can leave the radio on all you like, you can leave the lights on all you like. You can just have a sixth sense that you know there's someone in the house. And I knew there was someone there. So we waited, and eventually a shape comes down the hallway towards us. I could just see this through the frosted glass. Woman opens the door. And she looks through the clear glass. And she sees on her doorstep a man dressed as a vicar and an officer in their number 1 uniform. What does she know? Used to give this talk every week, never had that effect. She reaches forward and opens the outer door. And I'll be working out what I'm going to say. I got as far as "good evening." Now, I won't repeat to you exactly what happened next, because when I repeated it to the officers doing their staff course at the staff college, they all burst into tears. But she screamed. All I'd said was "good evening." She screamed. Kept shouting, "No, no, 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 no." We're on the doorstep. The whole estate heard that scream. What is that scream? That was the sound of her heart breaking. That was the sound of her heart breaking. She knew what was coming next. She didn't want it. There's nothing worse we could have brought her that evening. We could have chopped her legs off. It wouldn't have been worse. She's screaming and hollering. Her heart's in pieces. And we're still on the doorstep, and all I've said is "good evening." Eventually, her husband hears this, comes down the corridor. "What's going on? You're doing my head in. Lads, what's all this about?" Like he doesn't know. Because he can see on the doorstep a man dressed as a vicar An officer in their number 1 uniforms. He don't need to ask. He sends his wife into the kitchen and she carries on screaming for another 20 minutes. Can we come in, please? Guys, what's all this about? What's this about? Can we come in, please? Eventually, we go into the house, we go into the lounge, at which point the officer has got his voice back. Are you Mr. Yeah, what's all this about? We have to tell you he's dead. It's brutal, isn't it? But we have to say it straight. We have to say it straight because otherwise it's not real. The grieving process can't start. None of their falling asleep, gone to better place. Heaven's got another angel. That's no use. So we say it straight and out loud. At this point, his heart breaks. Only his breaks differently from hers. He just stands there going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He can't do anything. There's nothing for him to do. However, us blokes always think there is. Now, ladies, in case you've ever wondered what blokes are for, different discussion for afterwards. But in case you've ever wondered what blokes are for, we fix stuff. That's our job. We fix stuff for the people we love. That's what blokes are for. Homework doesn't appear on printer at home. Daddy, fix it. Flat tire on car, wife can't get to work. Daddy, fix it. About the age of 5, Rachel was going around the house quite often going, Daddy, fix it, Daddy, fix it. Well, great confidence in me, but gives you some understanding of what dreadful order some of our equipment must have been in. He can't fix it. He can't fix it. His wife's heart is breaking in the kitchen, and he can't fix it even so far as to give her a hug. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So we come up with a few ideas. Is there anyone at church? Is there anyone you could call? Any family, friends to come round? Oh, yeah. And immediately he's got something to do. And he starts making phone calls. And eventually the house starts to fill up with families and friends who look daggers at me and the officer. I'm left alone in the lounge. And the curtains move. I notice that the TV's on, but it's been on silent all this time. 2 glasses of wine. They've been sat down for an evening's telly. Who wouldn't? And we'd walked in and smashed their world. Curtains move again and the cat walks past. An evening's telly, a couple of glasses of wine, with the cat in the lounge. What have we done? What had we done? Micah says to those people, the instruments of war will become agricultural instruments to that family. That never happened at Shrivenham. Used to inflict it on other people. Never thought to get it back. To that family, Micah says, in the words of the Lord, the tanks will be tractors. Your children aren't going to prepare for war anymore. Jason's going to bring our prayers.